I'm Stefan Bartelski. I live here in Cumming, and my layout is called the Blue Ridge line. It's a HO representation of the Etowah O line. Come on through and see the layout. Alexa, let's run some trains.
Ready to run trains.
As you can see in my model of a model, there is actually a loop here, and many of you know of the famous Hiwassee loop up in Tennessee between Copper Hill and Etowah. That's one of my layout design elements. That will actually be appearing up here, and again, because it's up high, it's going to be a very important, significant part of the layout. This part is a model of the Little River Bridge. Again, it does exist on the prototype. I had to, like always, shrink it a little bit from the original, but it's as close as I could get within the space. It's totally scratch built. All of the bents are made from wood. The girder part is made from Central Valley parts. The ties on the girder are handmade, and the supports, the two concrete supports, are again cast from real concrete. So this part of the layout, we have the Georgia Marble plant up in Nelson, and those of you that know Nelson and that part of the Georgia Northeastern will know that the main line still goes underneath a couple of crane runners there, as you can see I've put in here. I've added a spur so that I can actually bring stuff down here. The prototype at one time actually had 5 or 6 different sidings, but they are long gone. There's only the main line left. In North Georgia, of course, very common are chicken houses, and I decided rather than have one in use and having to model the smell, I would have an old one, disused. You can see the tree growing up through there. The roof is made from a real corrugated aluminum foil that you buy for modeling, but what I did, I actually etched that using very dangerous etchant, but it really makes it look like a totally rusted and wasted roofing. I think that's rather a nice effect that it gives it. Totally scratch built this model, and it's my latest scratch built model. You may have noticed all along the layout I've been using photo backdrops, and as you can see here, they're very detailed, very realistic. I tell my wife, even though they are a little more expensive, they save me a lot of money on having to buy trees because all the trees are on there. But you can also get them with buildings, and here you may notice that I've included some 3D work because the power lines actually come out of the backdrop. Backdrop is actually made by a company called Trackside Scenery, and he does a very good job of making very realistic backdrops. So here is the tape depot, well known to many people. As mock-up, I intend to build, and it'll have to be scratch built, a model of that. As you can see, I have the plans from a friend of mine, and look forward to having that on the layout in the future. Marietta does not actually have a rail-served scrapyard. But it made a nice little industry that I could squeeze in between the other tracks. The concrete blocks there, by the way, are made from real concrete. I made a mold and cast a bunch of those, and then collected all sorts of pieces of scrap from kits and from whatever to make the scrap that's in there. So Capital Materials is rail served in Marietta on the prototype, and I haven't copied their site exactly. I didn't have the space for that, but it's still got that same rail service. The fence around the complex there is topped with barbed wire, and I found a very realistic looking barbed wire at Hobby Lobby, silver thread. And it's actually embroidery thread, but you take that thread and then you unravel it. It's plaited, and so it has a number of threads in there. And if you get it down to one thread, it makes, I think, a very realistic looking barbed wire. This spur here represents the Dow Chemical spur that can be found on the prototype line, although I've moved it a lot closer to Marietta. It's a little bit further up on Canton Highway in the real thing. What I have copied from the prototype is the fact that there is a gate to get access to the spur, and it has a lock like the real one would have. But instead of having to pull it open, I actually have a crank here that will open it up to enable switching. And then when the switching is done, the crank is turned back and the gate gets closed and locked. So you may have noticed I have a lot of trees here, and those of you that are in the know will recognize there are some super trees, there are sedum trees, but there are also these pine trees, and I've never seen these either in a magazine or a book or anywhere. These actually come from a hydrangea plant. So on the left here you see how these trees come off the hydrangea plant in the fall, at the end of the fall, and then this is how the plant, once it's got treated with dark green flock, looks more like an HO scale tree. You could perhaps use it in O scale as well if you had a slightly large one. I think they're probably a little big for N scale. But okay, the line starts at Elizabeth, as does the prototype. On the prototype, it interchanges with the CSX at Elizabeth. I've just turned it into a yard, and then out of here we're going to go north towards Marietta. So as part of setting up for operations, I decided I wanted to run this layout on track warrants. And I saw in the NMRA OPSIG, someone was using the JMRI panels as a sort of magnet board. And so I've taken that idea and I've basically laid out my layout. You can see the white sections here are the current and about to be built sections, and the grey sections above are later phases. So when dispatcher creates a track warrant, he'll be able to indicate it, and of course the crews operating now will have a visual reference as to what their track reference is. So let's take a train that's leaving from Elizabeth Yard and going into Marietta into the siding. Let's say that is locomotive 1911. And so I can move that down there, and the dispatcher can move this along as the train moves along the different parts. And maybe I have another train which is coming from Whitestone and going through Jasper and coming into Tate. And let's say that's locomotive 6574, and that one could be going along here. When he comes to Tate, he may be doing some working, and I can click on this, and you see the green box that appears now, and that holds that whole section from a track warrants thing for that train to work that part of the layout. Operating sessions, the train crews will receive a switch list which will tell them where to take and pick up freight cars along a train's route. And on the back of the clipboard are the rules for operations, things like what kinds of signals to use, what speeds they can do, things like separation of hazardous loads, etc. Rule number 9 in the operating sessions guidelines is rather interesting. Look at the end there. It says, beer in the taps, rule G does not apply. My other hobby, or one of my other hobbies, is brewing beer, so I really couldn't have rule G applying on this layout. So you may have noticed there is a level above the currently ready part of the layout. This is going to be the other end. The layout is point to point. This is going to be Etowah. This will be the Etowah yard, which is basically going to be a mirror of Elizabeth. But the layout will end up here, and then of course we've got a lot of track that goes through the rest of the room, constantly pretty much at a 2% grade all the way through the room to get up to this level. On this upper level is where the loop is going to come around itself, go underneath itself, and then come up around the top here. It's quite a height gain here, but as I said before, it's a prototypical thing, the loop up in Hiawassee between Copper Hill and Etowah. So as you can see, Tate is still in development. As this is an operational layout, I concentrate on laying the track and making sure everything's running as well as possible before starting scenery. Tate will have 3 sidings, 2 interchange in and out for the mines, and 1 for local a feed store and a team track. Here the line splits between going off on the left here to Jasper and going off on the right to the famous Marble Hill switchbacks that lead down to the Georgia Marble mines, and that's where the little blue and white switcher will be bringing cars up and down from the mine up and down those switchbacks. So that's going to be the next phase of the layout, and that the bench work is currently under construction, and we hope to start laying rail when that bench work is in place. Well, thank you for visiting my layout, even though it was a virtual visit. I hope that you'll be able to come next year in the next year's Piedmont Pilgrimage, and by then I hope to have a lot more track work available and a bit more scenery. But it's been nice seeing everybody, and it'd be even nicer to see you face to face, so look forward to that. Alexa, leaving train room.
I am powering down the layout now, and the room lights will turn off in 5 minutes. The basement thermostat is adjusted for summer non-occupied setting. I hope that you had fun.